This is a replica of the famous Stanley Cup. It was given to players of the 1960-61 Chicago Blackhawks. The last time the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup, as a matter of fact. Some of the names: Pierre Pilote, Robert Hull, Murray Belfour, Stan Mikita, Alvin McDonald, better known as Ab McDonald. He owns this. Winnipeg's own Ab McDonald. I saw him play junior for the St. Boniface Canadiens when they lost out in the Memorial Cup final to the Barrie Flyers. I remember being, so upset. I want you to meet a guy who's been around a long time in the NHL wars, Ab McDonald.
Dave, how are you?
Howdy, Ab.
Come on in.
Thank you. McDonald's home is full of mementos of a fabulous 22-year career in pro hockey. He played on 5 NHL teams and won the Stanley Cup 4 times. Ab was only 16 years old when he played junior for the St. Boniface Canadiens. They went all the way to the Memorial Cup final, losing in 5 games to the Barrie Flyers. A young Don Cherry played for the Flyers that year, and other members of the Barrie team went on to play in the NHL.
Don McKinney and Doug Mones, some real fine hockey players, and they were very, very well coached by Hap Ems, who had a habit of getting his teams into the Memorial Cup final and played very, very well.
His first pro team was with the Rochester Americans. Looks like famous TV host Ed Sullivan was a McDonald fan. At the end of that season, McDonald was called up to play for the Montreal Canadiens in the Stanley Cup final. He remembers being thrilled just to enter the Habs dressing room.
When you walk into that room, it does something, I guess. I mean, it has done to a lot of players through the years. Because you take 2 years ago, everybody said they didn't have the team to win, but they won it.
How did they treat a young Ab McDonald? They're in the middle of a Stanley Cup final, and a young Ab McDonald comes into the dressing room. How were you treated?
Oh, you get treated very, very well. I mean, you're there to help them win.
After 2 years with Montreal, McDonald was traded to Chicago. The Hawks were a powerhouse in 1960 and were about to enter the Stanley Cup finals against Detroit. But McDonald's greatest satisfaction was beating his old teammates, the Habs, in the semifinal.
But beating Montreal on that round was something because, as I say, they'd won 5 previous Stanley Cups and they were on quite a roll. And I knew how good they were because I played with them.
The Hawks went on to beat Detroit and win the Stanley Cup, and McDonald contributed with some key goals. Here's one of them. Ab McDonald, following Bobby Hull in on goals, scores! The 1962 Stanley Cup final. Here's Ab McDonald scoring another goal for the Hawks against the Leafs. McDonald was a member of the well-known Scooter line in his 4 seasons with Chicago. He had great respect for his mates, Stan Mikita and Kenny Warham.
Stan, of course, being the magician with the puck, he was just a great talent with it, and he could score goals and not only set up plays. And Kenny, of course, had amazing speed. Guys would be skating down the wing and I figured they was going all out, and then all of a sudden Kenny turned it on. And the guy was left standing, and that's, I'll never forget that because he just had amazing speed.
The NHL expanded in the mid-60s, and McDonald was traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Union duties did him in there.
That was the first year of the Players Association. And of course, I was one of the Players Association leaders in Pittsburgh, so we had a number of our players get traded.
McDonald was picked up by his old friend and former coach Scotty Bowman in St. Louis, where he was to play in 2 more Stanley Cup finals. They lost both times, and Ab remembers being on the bench when Bobby Orr scored his famous Stanley Cup winning goal in overtime. The Bruins had a great team, but they also used some strategy to down the Blues.
It was an afternoon game in the Boston Garden, where the temperature was in the mid-90s. And we always said, Boston Bruins had an air conditioner room and they give us nothing. It was quite refreshing in their room, but it was just so hot.
McDonald was then traded to the Detroit Red Wings, where he played in yet another Stanley Cup final, his 7th. The Wings lost to the Habs that year after winning the first 2 games in Montreal. McDonald wound up his career in Winnipeg. He was the first captain of the Winnipeg Jets and scored their first ever goal in the WHA. A long and illustrious career was winding down where it all began, in his hometown. Ab McDonald, an NHL living legend.